Robin's doing it right
Okay.
now. Okay, we're good.
So I'll be looking for a motion here to authorize the executive director to negotiate the MCIDC administrative fee on the potential bond deal.
It's Lynn, I'll move it.
Thank you, Andy.
What's the fee? What's the fee? You gotta say what the fee is.
It's going to be a negotiated fee, as we discussed in executive session.
Yeah, but not to go below 25, right?
That's our goal. That's our goal, is to not go below that 25 basis point threshold. And we plan to come to a conclusion today on a call at 1 o'clock with our neighboring counties.
So if they go below that, you can negotiate that then still, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Hanif, I would say that the floor is 15 basis points, but as we said, that is not our goal. Our goal is 25, and we're going to work to keep it at 25.
Okay.
Why don't I reset? Looking for said.
Joining the meeting.
For that side. Andrew Nudd.
PP Carr, second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Joining the meeting.
Matt Carp, Raymond James. Thank you. Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think we have some guests joining.
We do. So I heard Matt Karp with Raymond James, the financial advisor to
Joining the
RRH.
meeting.
Chris Canada.
Hi, Chris. Andrew Nudd with RRH is on the line. Chris Canada with Hodgson Russ, counsel to RRH, is also on the line. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. We are about to consider the bond resolution for the Rochester Regional Health System project. Rochester Regional Health is a New York not-for-profit, vertically integrated healthcare delivery system that provides care to residents and clients in Monroe, Genesee, Ontario, and Wayne counties and several surrounding counties. RRH has requested that MCIDC issue up to $373 million in revenue bonds to undertake refinancing and capital equipment projects at Unity Hospital, Rochester General Hospital, Newark Wayne Community
Joining the
Hospital,
meeting.
and United Memorial Medical Center. In addition, the plan of finance includes the construction of 2 new medical facilities in the town of Penfield and in the town of Geneseo, Livingston County. Additional information can be found in the application and public hearing notice, which is in the board's packet.
Would the team from Rochester Regional Health representing the health system like to make any comments on this project?
Bless you.
Thank you.
Andrew or Hugh, are you both on, I think?
Yeah, this is Andrew. We're excited about the project. We're excited for, some of the projects we're working on, and, some of the refinancing we'll be doing will be a good saving for the health system. Just looking forward to maintaining our good footprint in the area.
Thank you.
This is Joe Rizzo. Wanted to ask, in terms of can you elaborate a bit more about the efforts with modernization, expansion, and what your plans are in terms of like reconfiguring space, et cetera, in terms of optimizing, you know, and enhancing the efficiency of the facilities?
Yeah, so there's been, you know, a number of projects. Some of the refinancing and the new money will be used for, you know, the critical care tower that we're building, or the equipment that goes in there. You know, I had a chance to walk through the area when it was being built. You know, everything's going to be modernized, newer technology. There's things, you know, smarter people than I can talk to, but I know our nursing stations and the way folks will be able to move about the area, it will be more efficient. One of the other projects is radiology project. There, you know, we're adding another entryway into the hospital to improve the flow of folks in and out. There's some other projects that are being worked on that will, you know, increase our technological capacities within the area, you know, newer machines, you know, better equipment, things like that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. We appreciate you coming to MCIDC to work with us. We are likewise excited to work with you. It's great for our community and the surrounding communities that your footprint lies in. With that, I'm looking for a motion from my board to approve the issuance of up to $373 million of tax-exempt and taxable bonds for the benefit of the Rochester Regional Health System project, as we've discussed.
I'll move that. Phil Smith.
Thank you, Phil. May I get a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Andy?
Thank you. I think you have your choice there, Robin.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion's carried. Thank you all.
The hospital team, you're welcome to stay on and be a part of the meeting, but you certainly don't need to. Onward, now that we have a bond resolution, and we'll talk later this week on a working group call.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Rachel.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Okay, I think everyone's clicked off here. Zach, are you on the phone?
I am.
Good morning, Zach. Can you walk us through your meeting yesterday of the governance committee?
Yeah, so we met yesterday. We reviewed the pay equity policy, and we really like where it is now. And we'll move it. We'd like to move it forward to the full board, and I'll let Anna go into it.
Thank you, Zach. On August 13th, the county executive issued an executive order mandating that all employers, contractors wishing to do business with Monroe County certify that they are in compliance with all state and federal equal pay legislation. August 13th was Black Women's Pay Equity Day. In conjunction with that executive order, the county executive asked that COMEDA and MCIDC both adopt similar policies. We worked with Rachel to establish some language that you'll see in your board packet that we would incorporate within our bylaws. This is a pretty straightforward policy. We are not asking that the board perform any auditing or certify compliance. This is an activity that we will take on in collaboration with the county executive's staff.
Joining the meeting.
You, Thomas.
We are essentially asking that businesses simply certify that they're in compliance and take it from there. it's just it's a matter of reflecting of value. And with that, I welcome your question.
It's Andy. I'm sorry, Pete. I have a question. It's Andy. So just with respect to the first sentence of the last paragraph. So in principle, I agree with the whole concept of pay equity. But if MCIDC staff should have reason to believe, what does that mean?
Well, it means that if we, in working with a business, we pick up on an issue that would trigger reporting. I don't know. We spoke with Erie County, which has a similar policy on their books, and they reported to us that they've never had an experience where they've had to claw back any incentives. They do sort of a randomized computer-based quote-unquote auditing process, and Rachel borrowed some of the language from Erie County for this policy, so it's legalese. Rachel, do you have any insight on what that actually means?
Sure. As Anna said, if there's any, we work with these businesses not just up until and at closing and afterwards. And if there's anything that comes to our attention, really at any time, it happens frequently. We'll get calls, for instance, a contractor will call us and say, we know you're involved on a project and we're not getting paid. We're going to file a lien. And so we'll step in, and I envision a similar situation here is if there's reason to believe either by the company, an employee letting us know, or just something we observe, we would direct that to be reported to the appropriate office as outlined at the end of the policy. But again, we don't envision this, and we redrafted to take the onus off the board and staff. And frankly, to show that we are paying attention to pay equity and asking applicants to certify that they comply with the New York state laws and federal laws regarding pay equity.
And I'll add that the County Executive, Adam Bello, is seeking to create a new Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This was discussed at last night's meeting of the county legislature. This is underway, and he will be appointing a chief diversity officer and an equal employment officer. And so our expectation is that once this policy is in place as of January 1, we would rely upon that office and that team to provide for the compliance process, similar to what takes place in Erie County. The Erie County IDA passes along the responsibility of monitoring to county government. And again, they reported to us that in the several years they've had this policy on their books, they've never had an experience where they found a business to not be in compliance, because the process is a self-reporting mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my only 2 cents is that I suspect that should have reason, and then paying its male and female employees, I think those terms end up being a little problematic, but I get the gist of it. I was thinking, if we say, well, it's not up to me, but one possibility would be something like if MCIDC staff become aware of practices that violate the MCIDC equal pay policy, it will refer the matter. And that way you don't end up constantly contradicting your own policy over time. But that was my only 2 cents.
Right.
And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't draft.
No, Peter, we actually talked about that, that male and female are not the all-encompassing designations. And so what we did is we went back and looked at the law, and that's the designation used. But as you said, we don't need to refer to genders. We can just remove that language. And that way our policy hopefully stands the test of time as laws are updated to be more in their designation of gender.
So, well, if I'm a typical company that's going to do business with us, do I know I'm in compliance with these laws?
Well, you should.
Okay, that's what I mean.
So the state, so New York State's pay equity law that was passed in 2019 is among the most stringent in the nation. I think we're only behind Colorado and the state of Washington, maybe California as well. So really this ultimately falls upon the New York State Department of Labor, where, you know, an employee who believes that they are being discriminated against in terms of their pay would carry that complaint up through to the state. So we're essentially we're asking businesses to certify that they are in compliance with New York State law, which is, again, very robust, as well as federal. The New York, I think it was passed in the 60s, the federal equal pay legislation. And this is not only about gender, it's about race and ethnicity and disability status and veteran status, and, you know, it runs the whole gamut.
Yeah, so my question would be, am I going to be, will I know enough and be able to warrant that I'm in compliance easily, or am I going to have to go to council?
Well, you would have to look at your payroll and look, you know, do you have two employees who have equal experience and the same job title, and yet one is a protected class, one is not, and there's a disparity there. I think this certification puts the responsibility upon the employer to consider those disparities.
Right. And, you know, New York State will have a watchful eye on this. Employers are required to file a New York State 45 or equivalent that lays out their employees, although I don't know if it goes down to gender. I'd have to look at New York 45. But, you know, not knowing enough about, not being a human resources or labor law attorney, and not knowing enough about how exactly the state monitors this. Like Anna said, it seems to be a self-reporting law and policy.
And that's all that. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. This is Joe Rizzo. A question on this topic is, when I heard you say that if an employer discovers some disparity, in order to be in compliance, does it mean that they'd have to demonstrate a path forward to work toward eliminating that disparity for them, or do they have to wait until that is accomplished and in place?
No, we're not asking them to present us with a path forward if they discover any disparity. Initially, we're asking them to certify, and if they certify and they're not in compliance, the only way that we would discover that they're not in compliance is if, when we implement a monitoring process in collaboration with the new Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and that particular application is pulled for monitoring, we would then reach out to the employer and have them self-report on their payroll information. And so they can give us, they can essentially lie to us. We're not going to police what they're self-reporting. But if an employee that works for that business files a complaint with the State Department of Labor, then that would trigger clawback. But in the case of Erie County, as I mentioned before, this exact same policy is on the books, and they've never had any adverse findings on any of the businesses. It's a reflection of values.
Well, so far. So far they have.
So far they haven't, right. Mark Polenkars is the county executive in Erie, and he established this policy in 2014 and called upon the ECIDA to set the policy up the subsequent year, so 2015. They've been doing this for about 5 years, and we had a call with them not long ago about the process. They said it's pretty straightforward.
I just think that, you know, the way this world is changing very rapidly, that although there haven't been issues there, we need to be prepared to address if we do come across a circumstance, even though it hasn't happened there, it does not to say that it may not happen
Right.
here in this community. So just kind of be prepared, is that those conversation situations are not pleasant to deal with. So
That's a very good point. And the climate right now is much different than it was 5 years ago when Erie adopted the policy.
exactly.
I'm following the county executive asked that we consider this and adopt this policy, so that's why we brought it to the board.
I think it should be considered, and I think it's very worthwhile adopting it. I just think if you can tighten up the language in that last paragraph, it goes to the issue that Joe was talking about, and frankly to what Phil was implying. And just as a small business guy, the truth is, I believe the vast majority of people don't set out to discriminate, but or at least most people don't set out to discriminate. But the way these things get defined with the Department of Labor and job titles and responsibilities and things of that nature, it's very easy to find yourself in a position that you didn't even realize you're in.
Right.
And so if the language can be tightened up a little bit to the extent that we're trying to further commercial development and growth in Monroe County, I would think that we would, consider trying to get out the spirit of people not discriminating, which is a good thing, consistent with language where they don't feel that somebody could potentially claw back something that they're depending on for a future business enterprise. That's what's tricky about this.
Right.
Andy, that was the question I guess I had. This policy, the way it's written, seems like if MCIDC becomes aware, it's simply a notification to the proper entity, but it's not contemplating any form of clawback should that entity in fact be found to be discriminatory in payroll practices.
Right. That's not written in the policy. Also, before any clawback would be initiated, if it were to come to that, we would provide the employer with an opportunity to.
Well, we have to revise our policy first.
Right.
Because right now our policy does not contemplate clawback. It contemplates reporting to the appropriate agency. So at this time, we're not suggesting a violation would result in clawback of benefits. We'll suggest the idea here is to follow the lead of the county executive and have a pay equity policy and have applicants certify, and to ramp it up over time. This is the softball, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Ella, and I also appreciated the fact that this policy was revised from what we had looked at previously, or at least the proposal we had looked at previously, so that the board wasn't involved in policing compliance with it. So the fact that that isn't included in here is comforting to me, and I think as a policy statement or a position statement, I am in favor of it.
Great discussion. I appreciate it. Important topic.
Thank you for the dialogue.
So are we gonna revise based on what Andy was talking about?
Yes, so if you can do a motion subject to the revisions discussed. You can adopt the policy subject to the revisions discussed. Yep.
To adopt the pay equity policy as revised as discussed here this morning.
I'll make a motion for that.
Thank you, Andy. A second?
I'll second, Ella.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That gives you enough to work with, Anna?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. And I know that the county executive will appreciate it as well. Your sister board meets next week. We'll have a similar discussion. And subsequent to that, there will likely be an announcement. So we'll make sure that we amend the language in advance of the COMETA meeting and in advance of that announcement coming forth from the county executive, in which he'll be expressing gratitude to the two boards.
Great, I'll open it up for any other business, or Anna, if there's anything else you'd like to share.
No, I appreciate everyone's time this morning. Our staff is seeing business as usual, kind of coming back to normal. As you know, the pandemic is still upon us, but we're seeing business activity coming back to life, which we're happy about, and we hope to see that continue.
Great, thank you. I guess my last item here is to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, PP Corp.
Thank you, Peter. Second?
I'll second, Andy.
Thank you, Andy, and I'm going to assume all are in favor. Thank you all for joining this morning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks
Have a
a
great
lot.
day.
Thank you, guys. Bye.